Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.
The Rock and Review is thrilled to bring you an incredible singer, songwriter, guitarist, and we're speaking to him from Sweden, although he is here in Nashville frequently. Jamie Meyer, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. How are you?
Doing great. I'll tell you what, you and I were talking before we started the interview, and we've stayed in touch for years because you've been like a staple here in Nashville. But, great new album release, All the Right Lanes, Volume 1. And you and I were talking, too. It's like the songs on here, Jamie, I know you're getting a lot of play on Spotify, added to list and everything else. But it's like you're covering country music. You got some rockin', you got some Americana. It's just I think when people buy the album or add your album to their playlist, if they're not happy with one style of music, stick around. The next song they'll love.
I like to tip my toe in a bunch of different waters, and it's like it depends on the song. I think to be fair, I think maybe back in the day, I think it was more important, especially for the labels, maybe, but to stay in one genre, and that's where you live, in this little box. Right. But I think now artists, I'm listening to albums all the time that has different kind of nuances, and so I see that as a good thing, I guess.
I totally agree with you, especially with the amount of play and everything you're getting. Also, you've been a regular at the Bluebird Cafe here in Nashville. How many times have you played the Bluebird?
Oh, I think it's probably 10 times now or something. Yeah.
Well, also on this new album, and I know, you've had such success with your previous albums, but this one I think is probably your best work to date, having listened to it a number of times already. How did you end up co-writing and kind of working with Bryan Adams?
So we were talking about Popstars back in Sweden.
Right.
This is before Idol came about. And so I was in a show called Popstars 2003. I came third place. Third, that's right. And and I was thrown in with all these hit songwriters, especially one called Jörgen Elofsson, who has written for Britney Spears. And because I think a lot of people forget, but I would say late 90s, early 2000, Swedish producers and writers, and still today, but they created the Backstreet Boys sound and the Britney Spears sound. Not that was my sound on my album, but somehow Sony Music at that time threw me into a room with a bunch of pop hit writers, Jörgen Elofsson being one of them. And through him, he showed me a bunch of, I guess it was demos that he and Bryan Adams have worked on. And so I remember when we were picking the songs, I mean, he written with so many people, and Bryan Adams was one of them. So we picked 2 songs on that album, on the first album, which you can also hear on Spotify. That's 20 years ago. Yeah.
It's hard to believe too, because I mean, you look so young still. It must be the Swedish water or the amount of blue.
It's a selfie lamp. It's a great selfie lamp here. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's so incredible all the things you've accomplished. Essentially, you're an international artist. Even though originally from Sweden, traveled and toured in the UK, obviously here in the United States. How did you end up going on the road with Lady A?
Here's the true story. I think I walked around the streets of Oslo, Norway, a couple of months before they were coming to Sweden, and I saw a poster of Lady A coming to play. And I thought to myself, that would be a great gig to open up for. And so I called my friend and my dear friend who also helped me book with gigs. Her name is Jessica in Sweden. And I said, let's just send the promoter, it was a Swedish promoter, let's send him a CD and see what happens. A few weeks later down the road, he called me up and he said, I'm holding a CD in my hand. And I said, well, sir, the reason I sent it because I wanted you to listen to is I wanted you to listen to it because I'm interested to see if I could open up for Lady A. and he, a couple of months, I would say a couple of weeks later, he called me up again and said, okay, you can open up for 3 gigs with Lady A. Okay, got it. And that's how it worked out. Yeah.
That is
it's very old
incredible.
school. You see a poster on the streets.
And you made it a reality, but it's just like, you and I have been talking while you've been here in Nashville. And obviously I know once things get back normalized, you'll be back here. But you've really become a part of the Nashville music community. And you only started coming here in 2012, right?
Right. And we also have to remember that I travel back and forth like 2 or 3 or 4 times a year. So, but I think for us, I think I can speak for all the international artists coming to Nashville. The truth of the matter is you want to accomplish as much as you can every time you come. So the speed I am in my head and my body is just, you just want to do as much as you can because I have a plane ticket that's going to bring you back home. So yeah, I'm not sure if it would be the same if I would be just a regular and just stay in Nashville. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and particularly, you've got a huge fan base in Europe as well. So it makes sense to keep them happy also and growing your audience here in the States. And I've got to ask you this too, with the new album, it is, All the Right Lanes Volume 1. So I'm assuming at a point we will hear and see Volume 2.
Yes, again, there are so many songs I've written over the past 4 years. That's why I knew from the get-go that this won't fit in one album. And so I think 2 years down the road, I will release All the Right Lanes Volume 2. And then before that, continue releasing singles every 3rd or 4th month. So yeah, that's the plan. And then we'll see what happens in between that. But that's the plan, at least. And
you and I were talking too, and you've got so many incredible songs on here and ones that I told you were my favorites before we started the interview. But also, the stripped down version you did of U2's Where the Streets Have No Name, and it really was a totally different take on this album. But what a great version of this.
Oh, thank you so much. I think it's too. I think why it came out the way it did is because of two things. I don't know how to play like U2 does. I don't know all the sounds that they do. Number 2, I think I've always, that Joshua Tree album, if you listen to it and if you hear songs like Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For.
Right.
If you strip those songs down, it's really an Americana album as well. So they had the style was leaning into that as well. The lyrics are so great. And for me, it was my living through this, being in lockdown and the world changing. I know the song is not about that. It's about, I think it's about a street in New York or something. But for me, it became, just went really well with the images that I built up on the video. So for me, that song has a lot to do with this the pandemic that's going on.
I'll tell you what, another one of my favorite songs on your album, Southern Drawl. And as I was listening to the album today, I was thinking, it's kind of amazing. Jamie Meyer, born and raised in Sweden, and he sings and speaks English better than I do, and I was born here. And then you have a song named Southern Drawl, and I thought, that's kind of ironic.
Yeah, it is. But that's the song. That song is totally about me being a character in that song. Is about soaking everything in, hanging out at dive bars, talking to people, everything, And then it sounds good to sing. So that's another reason too. But
well, and as you know too, Jamie, from being here in Nashville, and I know even when I go back and see friends and family back in Missouri or Las Vegas and stuff, to where they're like, wow, you've really got a Southern drawl now. It's like, well, you live in Nashville. This is kind of how you sound at a point.
Yeah. And all the credits to also my co-writer on that song, Brandon Will. I mean, he had that idea going on solid. And I kind of added the reputation, free. And yeah, I remember it. I knew that was going to be the first track on the album. I just loved the intro and
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of which, I have to bring up also, because you and I always stay in touch before I even got to bring you on the show. And we're both kind of guitar nuts. And I know you've been working with Ferk for a while. And, you've been playing several of their models in studio and on tour. And in fact, you've even played one of their 9-strings.
Yes. I have to just show you real quick. Here is, it's built like a 9-string, but I play it like an 8-string. It's really weird to explain, but I would say one thing. Anytime, just to give the Ferch some credit here, if I'm in a writer's round in Nashville, I may not be the best player behind the guitar, but I know for sure people are always walking up to me asking, what is that guitar? Sounds amazing. And it does, really,
Once again, and you're so humble about it, but you are an international artist. I mean, obviously based out of Sweden, but, playing all over Europe, UK, and Nashville. And so you kind of have to be able to depend on the guitars you take on the road with you.
That is right, too. Yeah. I even have, there's also a little crack in the guitar from flying so much, but it still holds up. So, yeah.
Well, I got to ask you this then, with the new album, now that it's released, All the Right Lanes Volume 1, are we going to see more singles and videos coming out too? Because I know following you on social media to where, it's been great seeing some of the things that you've been doing with a lot of your friends and everything else, with some of the videos. You're doing some cool stuff. I just wonder how you're going to roll those out.
So next up, I've got me and my better half, Suzanne, who I'm living with at the moment here in Linköping, Sweden. We wrote a song in October, and that song is my first duet I've ever released. And we got a video coming out and a single February 12th. So I guess All the Right Lanes 2 will kickstart with that song February 12th coming out. It's called One Light Burning. So that's next up.
I want to make sure also, Jamie, that our viewers know where they should go for your website, social media, everything to keep up with the new songs, the albums, and also when touring starts up again, where should they go?
The easiest is just Jamie Meyer Music. I'm Jamie Meyer Music on Instagram and all social media. Also, website is jamiemeyer.net. Instagram and Facebook. Keep up with me there. And like I always say, I always follow back.
Well, I want to say, Jamie, congratulations on the great new album. Jamie Meyer, thank you so much for coming on the Rock Review. Love the new album, and I can't wait to hear and see your new music coming out.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Eric.
Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of a Bobby Bones Show.